All right, hey, so I'm just gonna make a quick video about dinner because it's pretty simple for me tonight. I'm just gonna put everything in the oven. It's been a long day, I'm a little tired, so that's what we're gonna do. All right, so we've got some gold potatoes. We're probably gonna make about half the bag tonight, maybe a little more. I've got a bag of Brussels sprouts. I like to chop them in quarters, roast them. That way they're still tender and crispy. And then, see, like 3 pans in the oven. And then the chicken, I found a good recipe. You split them or you leave them, but you pound them out so that they're thin. And then you put them in the baking dish and you put a little seasoning on them. And you bake them pretty high temperature for a short amount of time. So anyway, and this is a little bit of prep for us because we definitely won't eat 2 packs of this, so I'll put some away in the freezer or in the fridge for later this week. All right, that's the prep. So for the potatoes, this is 1 potato. I just cut it in half and then rotate it and cut it in half again and then chop, chop, chop. And I decided to do all the potatoes because sometimes I forget to finish them later. And I like them in my breakfast omelets. All right, so maybe I needed a bigger pan, but that's okay. I'm gonna use ghee on these potatoes, and it's a little solid right now, but as the oven warms it up, it'll melt, and I can just stir it quickly and to coat everything again. Sorry, you can't even see that. And this is the ghee that I'm using, just because it's coming from Amazon on a subscription right now, and that's pretty nice and easy. But grass-fed is important. Ghee, if you're not familiar with it, it's clarified butter. So they take butter and they melt it down, and then they take off all the cream and the lactose and the proteins, and all you're left with is the fat, and that's great for cooking with. All right, so I put the oven on 425, and I'm putting the potatoes in first because they take the longest. I know everybody's like, oh, it's only 40 minutes for potatoes, but seriously, it seems to take forever to make those potatoes crispy and soft inside, crispy outside. All right, so I'm gonna prep the chicken next because that's what takes the next longest in the oven. I've sliced it lengthwise, the whole breast lengthwise, and you ask, gosh, how do you pound this down? Well, it's kind of silly. I'm just gonna take this parchment paper and pound it. You know, get some motion going, get out my frustrations of the day. Anyway, I'll pound those until they're quite a bit thinner, and then I will put them in my pan over here. All right, so the chicken is in there in a thin layer, and I just added the seasoning on top. Oh, before I forget, I did put some avocado oil on the bottom so it doesn't stick. Ginger, oregano, garlic, paprika. I'm not sure how it's gonna taste. Hopefully good. Oh, I should add a little bit of salt and then pop it in the oven, and then I'm gonna work on the Brussels sprouts. Okay, so the Brussels sprouts, I like to cut them in quarters or smaller pieces. First, I chop the very end off. You see how much came off there? And then once I have them in quarters, I throw them in. I rub a little ghee around in them as well, and then I pop them in the oven. So here's a little note about cooking. You'll notice that this Brussels sprout and this Brussels sprout are super different in size, right? This one's like twice as big. So you want to try to cut everything a similar size so that everything cooks at about the same rate. And that just means you won't have like a big Brussels sprout over here uncooked and a little one that's burnt. So this one, I might not cut at all. I might just chop the end off, but this one I'll still cut in quarters. This one I would cut in half. This one I would cut in half. So you just kind of try to get them similar sizes so that they cook more evenly. All right, so now everything's in the oven. I think the other things are gonna be ready before the potatoes, so we'll just have to wait a little bit. I did cook them at 425 because that's what the chicken recipe called for, and I will just keep an eye on that and keep checking. The other thing when you're cooking, things I take for granted are you've got to have a sharp knife. Otherwise, things like chopping up potatoes or Brussels sprouts take longer and it's more frustrating and you're more likely to cut yourself. Oh, and here's my cooking companion. Hey girl. All right, so there's two ways to tell if your chicken is done. One is a thermometer. We'll wait and see what that shows up with. The other is to slice it open and see if it looks pink. That's pretty straightforward and simple. And with the thermometer, I think we want to get up to 160 with chicken. Maybe 165, I can't remember. And so I checked it at 15 minutes. I'd set a timer for 20 minutes. I checked it at 15 minutes. Potatoes still have a little ways to go. Brussels sprouts are starting to look yum. And this is moving super slowly. All right, so just taking the potatoes out to check, move them around a little bit. See, they're getting a little crispy and dark on the bottom. That's wonderful. I'm gonna check with a fork. There's my girl, my original girl. Yeah, they're getting softer. This one's, they're not quite soft. Watch out, Matilda, it's very hot. They're not quite soft enough, but they're gonna go back in for a few more minutes. And then we'll see. All right, we're checking the chicken again. It's been 20 minutes. Always make sure to go through the thickest part of the chicken if you're taking a temperature reading. I'm sliding down. Not quite, but this one also not quite, or not enough of my thermometer is in the chicken. That's important. There it goes, climbing back up. Can be tricky using a thermometer. All right, so if this is at 165, I'm gonna call it a day and leave these on the counter while we wait for the rest of the food to come out. The potatoes are getting closer, but not ready. Oh my gosh, what a mess. The Brussels sprouts are looking pretty good. Oh, fogged up the camera. Pretty good. They can stand another couple minutes just to get softer in the middle. And we're getting pretty close, but not quite there. All right, so I took the chicken out. I cut it just to make sure, and it looks really good. It's completely cooked. I just didn't want this guy who's thin to get super overcooked, which probably already is, but that's fine. The Brussels sprouts I'm gonna take out in a minute, and the potatoes, I'm gonna leave them in a few more minutes, maybe 5 to 10. And unfortunately, I didn't time it perfectly, so our chicken and our Brussels sprouts will get a little cooler while we wait for the potatoes. Anyway, that's that. All right, the Brussels sprouts are out. This is really my favorite way to have them. I'll put a little salt on them, and they're still, they're crispy and tender at the same time. And the potatoes are coming out in a few minutes. One thing to note about cooking with the oven, the more times you open it, and it's so tempting to just open and check on everything all the time, the more times you open the oven, the cooler it gets, the harder it is to stay at temperature, and the longer your food takes to cook. So resist the urge. All right, so the potatoes are out, Brussels sprouts, chicken. I've already started serving up the kids' plates. Brussels sprouts, chicken. One kid will have mayonnaise. This one will probably have honey mustard or spicy mustard. And I'll add the potatoes, and we're done. Bon appetit.